To have about 1,000 people before it feels like anyone's there. And nobody likes to be the first person at the party. So you want to make sure you have at least 1,000 people. And if you have it divided by category, like Italy, you need 1,000 people in the Italy section. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Now, that's just a requirement. Doesn't mean don't do it. Then one would think, how could I be the aggregator of the best travel advice, like basically compete with TripAdvisor? But TripAdvisor tries to do everything. And what if I was just TripAdvisor for honeymoons? Honeymoon advisor. And then how would I solicit all the best information about honeymoons? And then you buy the domain name worsthoneymoon.ever.com. And it's a comedy site where people tell their horror stories. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. That's.
All right. Good. My internal clock's correct. Yep. 11:35. That was perfectly timed. So that was fun. So we have an afternoon session, which you guys are all invited to. Is that correct? Okay. Cool. We have an afternoon session. In the afternoon session, I'm going to get a little more down to earth, meaning we're going to be talking about a model for success. Unfortunately, most entrepreneurs fail to get the two things that they wanted in the first place when they went into business. Number one thing that an entrepreneur wants when they go into business for themselves is freedom, and the number two thing that they're looking for is wealth. And unfortunately, most entrepreneurs end up being a slave to their business way more than they ever would if they had a normal job. You can quit your job. You can't quit your business very easily. And as we discussed earlier, unfortunately, even entrepreneurs that are making $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 a year, often in revenue, often at the end of the year don't have anything in the savings account to show for their hard work. So we know why this is. We call it dodging the wealth bullet. And I'm going to show you in the afternoon a model for where in the entrepreneurial picture does wealth occur and what exactly you need to do. I tell the story of a business that starts at nothing and goes to fully scalable, where the entrepreneur does have the wealth and freedom that they want. And you can see where you've left off in that story as I go through. You'll see exactly where you are, which indicates exactly what you need to focus on next. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll do some more Q&A at the end of that. At the end of the day, I have a gift for you all, which will answer your question about that. In 15 minutes, I can tell you in a 15-minute conversation, I can tell you what's next for you. I'm basically going to offer that what's next for you conversation for free for everyone here, just as a gift, as a thank you. So that will be at the end. I'll be offering it at the end of the day. So in the meantime, let's have an awesome lunch. You've been great, and I'll look forward to seeing you after lunch. So thanks for coming back. And this afternoon, as I said, we're going to tell a story. We're going to tell a story of how a company goes from startup or nothing and grows to become a truly scalable business. In watching 7 companies reach that $1 billion mark, and another, I'd say, 20 to 30 companies grow rapidly in other ranges, and then about 2,000 entrepreneurs make their first $1 million. Your most valuable resource really is your attention. And often that attention is expressed over time, so like calendar months. And if you grow twice as quickly, then you end up getting 4 times the time back on the back end. See how that works? You grow twice as quickly over time. You end up reaching your goals that much more quickly, and you end up usually getting about 4 times your time back because you're able to delegate, automate, and outsource that much more quickly. And I guess I wanted to make a distinction between grow and scale. We're going to be talking about scale and what's the model for success for scaling your business. And what's unique about scaling is that, like if you were to scale a picture, when you scale something, it retains its original dimensions. If you were to grow something, you kind of can grow in any which direction. I don't know if you guys have had the experience of a business maybe 15, 20, 25 years that's been growing and growing and growing, and it just sort of, it gets these appendages. You first start the services division, and then they do this thing, and then they're doing this other service, and then we have a product which is sort of related to that, and these appendages start to grow in the business, and it starts to be quite distorted, and it's no longer the original shape of the business that you had in mind, which is fine. When you grow a business, you will make more revenue. But usually, if you are just growing and not scaling, then your expenses, the expenses and the overhead and the bandwidth that it takes from you to manage all of those different things and keep your eye on all of the balls, it gets heavier and heavier and heavier on you, and the business will stop growing when you decide that's too much, that's too heavy. You guys have heard of the Peter Principle? The Peter Principle is that everyone in a large organization is promoted to one step beyond their competence. It makes sense. If you're really good and an individual contributor, then they'll make you a manager. If you're really good as a manager, they'll make you a director, and so forth. And if you are a director and they promote you to VP, and you were really good as a director but you suck as a VP, they'll stop promoting you, and that's where you stay. The downside, of course, is that everyone in the entire organization is incompetent, because they're all already promoted to one level above where they have any capability. Well, the version of that we have as entrepreneurs is that entrepreneurs are always operating at one level above the capability and efficiency of their systems. Entrepreneurs are always operating at one level above the capability and efficiency of their systems. Because we're capable, and when there's a gap, we can fill it with ourselves. If there's a customer that needs something, we can call and handle it. If money's tight for a couple of months, we can hustle and pull rabbits out of hats. So that means that you're stuck pulling rabbits out of hats at the level that's just one above whatever systems you build. And when the scale tips, so that you're spending more time and more of your energy hustling and pulling rabbits out of hats than you are building systems, then you have doomed or predicted the end of growth forever of that business. Like that? All right, so what we do is when we tell this story, you're going to see yourself in the story. You can say, that's where I am. And with any luck, you'll know exactly what to do next. The most common experience that people have when they hear my wife Jennifer and I talk about this scale model that we're about to look at, it's like a big relief because you know exactly what to do. So you up for a big relief? Cool. All right, so we just imagine a regular company. It starts with a startup. This particular startup has 2 founders. And in the startup mode, you're just trying to figure stuff out. You've got an idea. Hopefully you've spoken to a couple of potential customers, and you've either seen other people do a business like the one you got, or you're buying a business that has been working in the past, or you just got an idea for something new, but it's a little bit all at once, and it's pretty frenetic. You know what I mean by all at once? You're kind of, I'd say you're wearing many hats, but you're all wearing them at the same time. It's not like you're spending one day doing one thing and another day doing another thing. I think one of the most difficult things for an entrepreneur when they're first starting out is distinguishing what needs to be done, because it just occurs like marketing, sales, fulfillment, overhead, planning. It's all one thing, and it's all happening at a fast pace. And the key to the startup phase is that you need to get the value equation right. Now the value equation is pretty simple. The value equation is that the value that the customers get is worth more than the price that they pay. It's worth more than the price, and the price is more than it costs you to create the value. So when the customers get more value than they pay for, and you can deliver that value to them for less than it costs you to do it, then you've got the value equation right. The steeper the value equation, the more profitable that business will be. Get into it. There's actually a strategic question there. We'll talk about that more in a minute. If you're thinking about going into business, or you're thinking about a new business, or thinking about a new division, or a new business model, if you're thinking about something new, you want to get the value equation right before you make any kind of investment. And you can do that by testing it out with a few customers. I mentioned earlier this new business that we've got, which does content marketing. Well, we spent a long time, actually almost 2 years, trying to figure out how to drive the cost of content marketing down to the point where the value equation would be a no-brainer for anyone who's already doing it in your business. So if you're already doing content marketing and blogging and social media in your business as a part of your marketing strategy, in my mind, $600 a month is a no-brainer. It saves so much time. When we first started looking at it, our first guess was that it would cost about $2,200 a month to get it done. And so, if you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to outsource it, probably it's going to cost you in the $2,000 range to do that. And so that value equation is not right. It's going to cost us $2,000 to get it done. The customer wants it for $500 or $600. That doesn't work. So we kept working at how do we lower the price? How do we provide more value so we can raise the price to the customer? How do we lower our costs? What are the ways we can do that? And we did all of that just by talking to people. We didn't invest any money. It was all conversation. We also own 4 other businesses, so it wasn't like we're doing it every day. We talk maybe once a month and say, I just ran across another transcriber, and that transcriber has this business model. So if we did this, we could pay them a little less. That means it could be $1,700 instead of $2,000. Okay, well that's it. And then we come up with another innovation to continue to drop the price. Once we knew that we had the value equation right between now and now, then the first thing to do is test it. And I think I mentioned that there's 6 customers that are going to be beta testing it right now. So what that means is they're actually going to pay us, and we're actually going to do it and see if our guesses about the value equation are actually accurate. Can we really provide the value for what we think we can? And are the customers really happy to pay it like they said they would be? And then once that's settled, then we're out of startup mode. That's the equation. Value is more than price, more than cost. If you are a service business and you notice that every time you go to sell something, the price changes based on the look in the eye of the customer. You say, how much does it cost? And you say, $2,500, $700. Or if every time you go to sell your service, the customer wants something different and unique that you've never done before, and you're thinking to yourself, well, we could do that. Yeah, we could do that. Then you're still in startup mode because you haven't figured out a thing that you can do that has that value equation. Right? You're changing it every time. As you're doing that, you'll start to notice that you're spending your time, when you try and get the value equation right, you're spending your time in some different areas. Some of the time you're spending is in sales. Some is marketing. When we say marketing here, what we mean is the activity of getting people who don't know about you to find out about you. When someone goes from I've never heard of you to I know who you are, that's the job of marketing. The job of I know who you are, starting there and getting them to I'm paying you for something, that's the job of sales. And then fulfillment, of course, which is the job of delivering on the promises that you made in the sales phase. So you're getting the value equation right, and you're starting to think of yourself really in 3 domains. I'm a marketing person, I'm a sales person, and I'm a fulfillment person. And in startup mode, it can be important for you just to notice how much time you're spending on those 3 areas. I've done an exercise called the time pie, where we ask you what you're committed to, and people list what they're committed to creating or what they're committed to, and then we say, okay, get out your calendars and your checkbooks, and let's look at how much time and money are you spending on those commitments. And the reality is always that the real commitment that you have, which is how you spend your time and money, is much different than your idea of your commitment. So if you want more leads for your business, for example, look at your calendar and analyze how much time are you spending doing activities that produce leads. How much time are you investing in figuring out new strategies that have worked for other companies like yours? And you'll usually find, if you want more leads, that you're spending 1%, 2%, 5% of your time. Anyway, so in startup mode, you're getting the value equation right. You're starting to think about yourself as these 3 different roles. What's left over, let's say you make $10,000. A portion of that $10,000 is spent on marketing, either through paying someone or buying advertising. A portion is spent on sales, and a portion is spent on fulfillment. And what's left over is a profit for you. A big mistake that a lot of entrepreneurs make here is that they assume that if they spend all their time doing marketing, sales, and fulfillment, but they don't have any expenses, that all the money that they take in is profit. Right? Let's say I'm working 20 hours a day, exhausted, and I'm making $150,000 a year in income, but I only have $20,000 in hard expenses. I could trick myself into thinking that I have $130,000 profit, couldn't I? Does that make sense? But I actually don't have $130,000 profit because there's no way I could ever pay anyone to do my job for that money. At 20 hours a day, all the stuff that I have to do, all the stuff I have to be good at. So if you imagine paying yourself for marketing, for sales, and fulfillment in startup mode, then what's left over after you've paid yourself is the profit of the company. That's super important. In startup mode, you want to, as an entrepreneur, consider yourself to be an expense to the company. Right? If you keep those things separate, then you can build a business model that's profitable and that doesn't require you to make lifestyle sacrifices in order for it to continue. Right? If you had a regular job, let's say you worked at a bank, it wouldn't be a very fun job if the bank owner said, listen, we need you to work all weekend this weekend again, because otherwise as a bank we're going to go out of business. But that's how, and if your manager said that to you, you'd either quit or I don't know what you'd do, but you wouldn't sign up for 10 more years of working at the bank, which is what we do for our own businesses. There's another category called overhead. And overhead means expenses that are not variable. In other words, they don't go up and down as you get more and less business. So if you have an office, your rent is overhead. Legal, tax expenses, the phone bill, things that pretty much stay the same regardless if you get more business or less business, that's all overhead. And I have a little dotted line here because there's a big confusion, I think, about overhead. The reason why that line is dotted is that the ratio of profit to overhead is totally about your ego and how much money you want to invest in gratifying your ego. So if let's say I had a company that had $1 million profit, and I wanted a headquarters with nice big old glass windows and a huge lobby, some original art, I'm going to be spending a lot of money on the overhead. But that headquarters isn't very likely producing any value whatsoever for marketing, sales, or fulfillment. Therefore, the only reason for the headquarters is to make me feel good about owning it. It's an ego gratification spend. Nothing wrong with spending money on gratifying your ego. You just want to be clear that that's what you're doing. So business cards, websites, for the most part, stationery, logos, usually not always, but the stickers that go on cars, your office, all of that stuff is overhead, and usually I'd say 80–90% of it is actually just ego gratification, which is fine. And there's nothing wrong with it as long as you know what you're spending your money on. Now, if it happens to have a direct result that you can measure on generating leads, on closing those leads, or on fulfilling on the promises you made to customers, then it's in one of those other categories. But, I've yet to see a brass and glass lobby with granite floors close any customers. Never seen it happen. So once you kind of figured out the value equation and you figured out these roles and they start to stabilize, in other words, they start to get predictable, repeatable, and replenishable. Then you've entered what we call the sustainable, or the sustainability phase. You're out of startup phase, you figured out the value equation, and things kind of have a routine to them. I remember, my first business was in the entertainment industry doing sound effects for student films and later small budget films, and after that big budget films. And I usually had no idea what kind of work we were going to be doing in 2 or 3 months. I didn't know the names of any of the projects. I didn't know what was going to happen. But I did know that we'd be busy. We'd been busy for 3 years every month. So I knew that even though I wasn't sure who was going to call, somebody probably would. Does that make sense? So I had a predictable, replenishable, and repeatable marketing program called word of mouth. I just didn't have my hands on the controls at all. I couldn't make it go up or down. I just kind of was trusting it was working out okay. But I knew it was going to happen. If suddenly a month came and there was no customers, it would be shocking. It would be weird. Same for sales. So I knew it was predictable that if 10 people came into the office that had a movie and they were looking for sound work to be done on it, that 9 of them would contract with us. I knew that would happen. That just by natural way of being or way of talking to them or whatever I had stumbled upon was a predictable, replenishable, and repeatable sales process. So marketing and sales were sustainable. Also, fulfillment. I knew that whatever agreement I would make in the sales process, I knew that we would fulfill on that agreement, and that it would be predictable and replenishable and repeatable, that customers would be satisfied that they got what they paid for. And that puts us in sustainable mode. If you don't yet have predictability, repeatability, and replenishability in any of these areas, then you got to work towards that. That's your goal. Right? In startup mode, your goal is get the value equation right. Once it's right, it's make it predictable. Predictability and repeatability is more important in business than short-term profit. Predictability and repeatability is more important in business than short-term profit. That's why if you have a public company and they have what's called an earnings call, where the CEO talks to the analysts on Wall Street, the ones who tell brokers what prices should be and whether they feel positively or negatively about a company's future. If every time there's an analyst call, you say a wildly different prediction, and something completely different other than what you predicted happens. Sometimes it's a lot less, sometimes it's a lot more. We said we're going to double, but instead we shrunk. We said we're going to stay the same, but instead we grew 4 times. That unpredictability will cause the value of the company, the stock price, to fall dramatically. Even if, on balance, over the course of a year, you're more often overperforming than underperforming. So you take that same company who has this radical variance in their performance that the CEO can't predict. And if you cut that company's revenue in half, but smooth it out so it's predictable, where every time there's an earnings call, the CEO says what's going to happen, and then what happens is 1% more than what he said, that company is going to be worth 4, 5, 10, 15, 20 times as much in the stock market. We value predictability. And it makes sense, right? Because we're in it for the long haul. It's a long game. If we're in it, with any luck, this life is going to last a little while. And something really good happening this month, but that you can't repeat, is not nearly as cool as having a system that you can stand back and it just happens again and again and again and again. So that's where you're going for that predictability. Also, predictability indicates control. If you can tell me what's going to happen, it's almost like you're controlling the future. It tells me that you're in power. If you can't tell me what's going to happen, then you feel to me to be powerless. Does that make sense? So you want the power in your seat, and you do that by predicting the future. You predict the future by understanding what it is that you're doing that's producing the value for the customers. How are you speaking in the sales situations that has them buy, and how do people come to you? What's the path that they actually use? You need to know those things. So once you kind of have the pattern, by the way, here I'll go back a slide. This right here is where most entrepreneurs stop and never grow past. This is the last stop on the train for 80 or 90% of entrepreneurs. And you can understand why, because each of these departments, marketing, sales, and fulfillment, in order for it to be predictable, who's got to do the job? You do. Exactly. And if you give someone else to do the job, what happens? Well, it stops being predictable. Right? It stops being replenishable. So you lock yourself into this mindset that, hey, I'm the only one that can do it. So raise your hand. It's okay. Raise your hand if you believe that there's parts of your business that you're the only one that can run. You're the only one. And if you, that was like 80% of the room, but I think the rest of you didn't want to raise their hand. It's okay. If you figured out how many people you'd have to hire to just replace yourself, what's that number? 6, I heard 3, 9, 2, exactly. So let's just say 3 conservatively. So you're sitting here running your business with the belief that if you had to replace yourself, you replace yourself with 3 people, which tells me that the capability in this room is, well, we're amazing. We've somehow collected all the most effective, most powerful people in the Central Indiana. It's a good job. I should thank the BAS group for finding you. I'm not sure how they located you.
And we're humble.
Yeah, exactly. We can still like each other without having that in common. You're humble, well, I'm learning. But, so, the joke is it's not really true. Yes, you're awesome. Yes, you are good at what you do. Yes, you have certain experience and understandings that help you do your job well. And certainly you've had the experience of trying to explain to someone else how to do it, and then they couldn't do it, and it was baffling. Because it wasn't just that they couldn't do it well, they seemed to suddenly have no capability to understand English. What are you doing, right?